49er faithful and fans of the Niners Station, welcome back. Today it's only going to be Mark and myself. Ryan has come down with a little bit of a cold, but we still wanted to do our weekly check-in, give you some training camp updates with the first week being in pads. So with that, Mark, and by the way, before we get started, please like and follow and subscribe to our YouTube station as we are trying to gain popularity. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Instagram as well. But with that, guys, let's jump back into it. Mark, how you been this week?
I've been doing good, man. It sucks that Ryan's down with that cold. We tried to push it off a day, see if we could make it. But the game time decision decided to go the two of us, hoping he gets better quickly. I'm sure he'll be back next week. Hope you're doing good. It's been a fun week. I'm actually coaching a Pop Warner team. We put pads on, and that's what the Niners did this week on Monday. They put pads on, and I think that's one of my most favorite parts of training camp is when the pads finally come on, you get to see, well, hear if you're not there, and see some highlight tapes of what these young guys, these new guys look like in pads. Are they going to produce the same way they were producing in the springtime without gear and shorts and t-shirts? So we've heard some good things over the first 3 days in pads, I think, coming out of camp on a few different podcasts. So I was wondering if you've heard anything interesting coming out of camp so far now that we got pads on.
Well, I'd like to start with the secondary. I think we talked a little bit about it before being an area that we felt pretty confident in, even though there's a little bit of turnover. But we got Huff coming back in a couple weeks. That was put out earlier this week. Jair Brown is doing his thing. Renardo Green, our second-round pick out of Florida State, has been making plays. I saw a few highlight reels of him breaking up passes against Juwan Jennings, who is a pretty formidable receiver. So as a rookie, that's awesome to see. And then you and I were just talking about Deommodore Lenoir. He apparently is, playing almost at the same level as Charvarius Ward, which, in year 3, I think it's year 3,
year 3
for Deommodore Lenoir, is really great to see. Hopefully we can find a way to pay him next year. But, with Charvarius Ward and Deommodore Lenoir as your anchors in the cornerback room, plus guys like Isaac Yiadom, Renardo Green, we still have Ambry Thomas, who's a mediocre who makes plays, right? I mean, that room is now deep. Safety room's deep. And in the past, that was always an area of concern for the 49ers. I mean, even when we had Richard Sherman, I don't think that our cornerback room was really...
It wasn't deep.
Something that we could... Yeah, it wasn't deep, right? It
Yep.
was like Richard Sherman hurt his ankle. All of a sudden, we're in shambles. We're playing people off the practice squad that are getting torched. So, I don't know. What do you think about Deommodore Lenoir so far?
Everything I've heard, he's been looking really good. I like to listen into Larry Krueger and Guy Haberman. They're out at practice and they give pretty good reports. And he's one of the guys they said that has been shining. Haberman said today that he thinks he's looking like a Pro Bowl or possible All Pro, just kind of coming into his own. And with him, you got to think he was a COVID kid. Remember, I'm pretty sure he sat out a year in COVID, so he kind of fell in the draft a little bit. Probably would have been drafted higher if he would have played that year. So year 3, right, that first year getting back into shape, kind of back into football form after taking a year off. Last year's kind of like a rookie year. And then now he's coming into his own. So he's showing that development where we could have a solid guy. And then, the paying the guy is always the hard part with this team because we have so many guys. But it's another kind of late gem that Lynch and Shanahan found that is now developed and going to be an impact player. Kind of like Emmanuel Mosley. He was similar. He was a slow developer, and we lost him because we couldn't pay him. But they replaced him, right? And so this guy, I think, is going to have a great year. We'll see if we can bring him back next year. Hopefully we can. Probably not, to be honest with you. But he can produce this year. And I've heard good things about Isaac Yiadom, too. So he might play in the slot, Yiadom outside. And that could be a nice DB room with Mustafa and Hufanga and Jair Brown, who I heard is having a great camp as well. So the secondary is looking great. And I'm excited to see what they do this year.
Yeah, I read something on Bleacher Report that Jair Brown's, he's confident in the team he's playing there, but he said something like they have an ability to be truly great, to be one of the best 49ers secondaries in the history of the franchise. And that's a big thing to say. Obviously, if you're a starter on the team, you're going to say that kind of thing, but just to have that confidence in the new room, right? Because there's a lot of uncertainty. Like going into the season, he didn't know if Malik Mustafa was going to play. He hoped he could play. Right? He knew Deommodore Lenoir could play. We knew Charvarius Ward could play. Everyone else was a question mark. And so now that we've kind of added some depth. And another thing that's interesting is I do think that we're going to bring back that physicality. in our secondary, like Diamondo Lenore can hit. I couldn't tell you which game, but I do remember him laying the hat on someone and it being a highlight hit. And when you get that out of a corner, for those of us that are, for people listening, no offense to the cornerback room, but they're not necessarily known as people that lay the hat. They're more known for shoestring tackles and not bodying up a running back and trying to tackle him from the side. And
I mean, Deion Sanders did one time say, I don't get paid to tackle. Tackling is a part of the game, but they get paid to lock down the receiver, not necessarily tackle.
So it's nice. And then another thing that you had brought up, Mark, which is so there's a little bit of a dynamic going on in the coach's room, and I'm sure there's a hierarchy. And it sounds to me that so far, Brandon Staley's right next to Shanahan, and then Sorensen's underneath him, even though Sorensen is the defensive coordinator. It sounds to me that he's going to be the scapegoat. If things don't go well, it's Sorensen's fault. It's not Staley's fault. If things do go well, Sorensen might get credit in a press conference, but everyone will know that it was Brandon Staley who, what was the quote that you were saying? Who was it? Diamondo Lenore that compared him?
He said he's a defensive Shanahan almost type. He's a defensive genius, kind of similar to Shanahan, where he understands concepts and where people are going to be and how to coach you and get you to understand it as well. So I think that's going to be fun to watch.
What was it? I think in the quote he had said something like, "It's Shanahan is good at offense because he understands defense, and Brandon Staley's good at defense because he understands offense."
Exactly.
And so I guess the way he talked about it is he's kind of speaking about the game and concepts and schemes, like Shanahan when he talks about the offense and why they're doing play action and why they're doing these routes and what they're trying to set up for later in the game, right, based off a certain defense. And so with Brandon Staley bringing that knowledge, I mean, whether he's the coordinator or not, I don't care as long as the results are on the field, right? And what I read about today that was really interesting to me was they were adding in a new defensive kind of concept where it's not uncommon to run this. People don't do it very often, but when you drop your defensive end into coverage underneath a tight end on the strong side, or maybe underneath a running back, or even a slot receiver, worst case scenario if it's trips, and you blitz. They've been blitzing Fred. They've been blitzing Lenore. They've been blitzing D Winters. They're blitzing Mustafa. They're blitzing Jair Brown. Every single person outside of the D line is getting a chance to blitz, and I do hope that we do that more this year, given that we have so much talent. We could take a little bit of a risk. We don't have to run base all the time, right? I mean, it is football. We should be better at blitzing. And it's not something we've had to be good at because we have a strong defensive line and our linebackers are fast. But why not use our fast linebackers to blitz a quarterback and add extra pressure so we get more picks or more sacks?
I think it's going to be – the blitzing thing is interesting because Steve Wilks, right, when he came in last year, he was known for blitzing. But Shanahan kind of was not receptive to it and was like, well, you're going to run our defense and we can maybe add blitzes. And then after that Minnesota game at the end of the first half when we went cover 0 and Addison got that touchdown, Shanahan essentially was like, yeah, no more of that. You're coming down the field. You're running our system. I think the strategy this year with Brandon Staley is he likes to blitz, but he's not the man. So I think Shanahan's idea of the way he structured it is Sorensen's the defense. He knows what I like to run. He's been in the system for many years. Staley, if you want to run anything outside of that, run it through him. And I trust Sorensen to say, yeah, no, Shanahan's going to like this, or no, we're going to do that because I think it's going to work. The thing with Staley is he's a 3-4 coach. That's his like bread and butter. He came up under Fangio. You got to remember that. And so they brought in Malcolm Floyd, who won a Super Bowl with Brandon Staley with the Rams, kind of played that outside linebacker pass rusher. So they can do those things with him. Last year, they didn't really have the personnel to do that, I don't think. And so with Floyd being here, he's understanding how to play that outside linebacker as well. He can play both. But knowing Staley, knowing his system, they can switch those things in. Floyd is athletic enough to do it. I'm sure Matos is athletic enough to do it. Beal can run a 4.340, so I know he's athletic enough to do it. So now you have guys that can kind of be flexible, but it's not going to be in everything. They're working it in to see what works, and you might see a lot more of that because of the personnel they have at defensive end, and then the mindset of Staley being a 3-4 guy and liking to blitz and switch up coverages. So that's going to be fun to watch. I think Sorensen's there as like a buffer so Shanahan can focus on the offense. And then if things do get sideways, then I guess he can step in again. But there were rumors that he was involved in defensive game planning last year, which I don't think was happening with D'Amico Ryans. So this year, I think he's like, all right, these are my two on defense. Run it through Sorensen. I'm going to focus on the offense and just get it done. And so I think that's the mindset on defense this year.
You're right. I mean, the personnel difference is huge, right? Nick Bosa and Drake Jackson were the defensive ends to start the year. You're not dropping either of those guys in coverage. Totally different with Leonard Floyd and Gross Matos. They are totally different types of ends. They're more of an outside linebacker end. Well, I don't know if Gross Matos is necessarily as athletic as Floyd, but I think he's athletic enough to be able to drop in coverage. And it is training camp, right? So this is where you try things that you wouldn't normally do. Right? Training camp and preseason, that's what it's for. Because once you get into your weekly routine, it's the game plan for that team. You're not experimenting really once the actual regular season starts. So they got 3 or 4 more weeks to sit there and go, hey, do we like this? Is it worth incorporating into a plan? Because we might play against a team where it works. And so hopefully that's what's been going on. Just really quick, in that tone, or I guess on that same topic, I think that's what's been going on with Brock Purdy. I don't know if you've heard, but he's been he's been a pick machine essentially. He had like 3 one day, 4 the other day. People were talking, oh, this isn't blah 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 blah. But then you have to look at it. He doesn't have his left tackle. He doesn't have Brandon Ayuk. Deebo and Kittle get their veteran off days. CMC gets his veteran off days. So he's probably out there with the 2s and the 3s, just saying, fuck it, I'm a gunslinger, because he's not going through rehab, which we talked about last week. So, again, when people hear training camp news, I think you just need to consider that this isn't a week practice. This isn't a game plan. This is experimentation. This is pushing players to do things outside of the comfort zone, really, to see if they can handle it, because what you run in training camp is going to be, let's say they're going to run 200, 300 different things. But when you get to your week, you're running 30 or 40, 50 things, right? It's very focused, right? You're not doing the same things in a regular season practice week that you are in training camp.
The most overrated training camp stat they release every year, it happens every time, especially if there's a quarterback battle, is the camp interceptions. It's the dumbest thing ever, because especially if you have a guy like Jimmy G who throws picks in the game regularly and then he's doing it in practice, you're like, okay, this is a sign. This is not good. He's not crisp in practice. He's not going to be crisp in the game. With Brock Purdy, who's proven to not be a turnover machine, he can get a little risky sometimes, which is fine. You want that kind of a smart risk taker. But with him, what he's doing is, like we talked about, he was not rehabbing. He was with Shanahan. How can we push this offense to different levels? And that's exactly what they're doing in these first couple of weeks. They're like, okay, so can I push the window here in this over the middle pass? Can we push it on this play action? Can we do this drop back combination? Whatever it is they're trying to implement. This is when, like you said, you take your risk, you see what works. And then during the season, if he's throwing picks in practice, when there's a game plan and he knows who he's going to, why he's going to, what defense they're attacking, things like that, then that's when it's a concern. But the training camp interceptions for a guy that has proven in the regular season not to have an interception problem is the dumbest stat out there, I think.
I mean, a lot of the time, too, you have to think about what happens at practice. And when people see that stat line, a practice stat line, you look at it and you go, that's terrible. But what happens in practice is a lot of those reps are, they want you to make a pass attempt to complete the practice rep. And when I say that, I'm talking about a situation where, what if Brock Purdy were to have been sacked? Well, he doesn't get touched in practice. Defensive ends or D linemen are going to run by him. He could have been, play would have been over in a game situation. But in a practice training camp situation, he's going to be asked to make a throw. Nothing could be open. That's another thing, too.
Yep.
You could get in a situation with, when you're going against our number one defense, where everyone's locked down, where you would throw it away or you would scramble. Well, you're not going to do that in training camp. In training camp or in preseason practices, it's the same thing. You're going to be asked to complete the practice route, the play. You're going to be asked to throw to someone. And Purdy is probably looking at it like, I'm going to make the best throw, but it doesn't mean that that person was open, right? There could be no play there whatsoever. But what doesn't get hurt is, like Debo apparently had the first deep touchdown of the day the other day. Beautiful basket catch, perfect touch by Purdy. That's what you expect to happen. But there's lots of other plays where you hear Josh Dobbs or Brandon Allen is, giving up picks to Malik Mustafa or something, right? It's ups and downs. It's hard to kind of gauge. Well, it's not hard. For me, I just don't take it seriously. When you hear stats like that or someone gets picks, a bunch of picks, that's cool. That means they're aware of where they're at in the defense and they're putting themselves in a position to make a play. But in a game, it might not be the same situation. Plus personnel. You don't know who's playing in each rep. Could be a bunch of third stringers. It could be second stringers, mix of everyone. You're not
Usually
getting.
it's not all ones. Usually it's
Yeah.
not you. Yeah.
So there's a lot going on there. Really quick training camp news, couple of highlights that I heard that I wanted to share with our listeners. There's been talk about Dee Winters and other linebackers outplaying Campbell. We have Cam Latu, the tight end last year that was out all season, is practicing finally, but he can't catch a ball to save his life.
I think he had a catch today. Kruger said on the recap, so he got a catch today.
He got a catch, but apparently he is a absolute liability when it comes to throwing him the ball. They did say that he looks like a good blocker. I just don't know how much weight that holds. Haven't heard a lot about Logan Thomas and don't know too much about the depth behind them. But that's one thing.
Mason Pline has looked athletic, the undrafted guy out of Furman.
Is he like the 6'6" guy?
Yeah, ex-basketball player, played football for 2 years. Super athletic, big guy, and I'm hearing like he's a great pass catcher, great in space. So really, it could come down to obviously it's going to be Kittle. I heard Braden Willis has been having a good camp. So it's kind of like, they have Saubert, right? So it's like, do you want the blocker? So what in the pods I've been listening to and the things coming out of camp, kind of sounds like there's a battle between Saubert and maybe Logan Thomas going on for a veteran to have on the team, kind of can block, can play everything. And then for the third tight end, you're looking between Braden Willis and kind of Mason Pline. They're both athletic guys. Braden Willis is an Oklahoma guy. Pline is a Furman guy. He might be able to keep Pline on the practice squad, but with his athleticism, he might get swooped up. So the tight end's going to be an interesting battle too.
I don't think Cam Latu makes the roster.
No, I think he's gone. Yeah.
I think at most practice squad, and that's a stretch.
I can see another team picking him up, just to kind of give him a shot.
Maybe. I don't know. If you're not catching the ball, I don't know why. But another, if you're just a blocker, that's important. And one of the Eric Crocker on his podcast was talking about training camp. He was actually there. I think this might have been 2 days ago. In the last couple of days, I've heard positive reviews as well. Is Dominic Pooney. I think he was our third or fourth round pick, the Kansas State guard, I want to
say. Kansas.
University of Kansas.
Yeah.
And he was apparently holding his own against Hargrave, Malik Collins, lots of, Niners D-line who's pretty skilled. And one thing that was impressive that Eric Crocker talked about was his ability to get to the second level. And what that means for our listeners that aren't aware is a lot of linemen are asked to do an initial block and double team and come off the double team and try to reach block a linebacker. Get in the way of guys like Fred Warner and Dee Winters, who are extremely fast. Fred Warner is arguably the best linebacker in the game, and apparently he's been able to get out there and block him a lot of the time. Not every time, but a lot of the time. What that means for our O-line is we have a guy that can play both guard positions and center, and I think he also played tackle. He might be able to play all 5 positions. I don't know if he's practicing at all 5. He's mainly been playing right guard, with Spencer Burford being out with the broken hand injury. So now right guard is open, and I do think Dominic Pooney is probably looking like the early emergence starter draft, starter choice for right guard, because lineman battles are a little bit different in practice and training camp to predict than skills positions, because if you can block in practice, that's the exact same thing you're doing in the game. You're probably seeing less stunts. You're probably seeing more base defense as well. And you're not going to be going against the same talent the Niners have every week.
And Pooney's going to get a lot of reps because I think Burford's out with an injury right now too.
He's out with a broken hand. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so actually, Pooney, you're talking about getting to the second level. A lot of that too is he's athletic. He played tackle, so he wasn't a guard his last 2 years in college. He went to a small school for 2 years, transferred to Kansas, made that jump right away, and started right away in a Power Five conference on an upcoming team. Kansas has been pretty good this year, and so he's a lot more athletic than your typical guard. You know, he can play all positions. Didn't give up a sack last year going against all those big schools in the Big 12. So Pooney, I think, has a shot now because he's going to get those reps. You still have Feliciano, who's a veteran, but that's a good swing guy to have. And then Nick Zakelj, Brock Purdy's roommate, which pretty sure Brock Purdy is married now. They're probably not roommates anymore. He's probably got a new roommate. But they have some good chemistry, and he's been running with the ones. I heard playing center, and that's 6'6" is a big center, but they've got the chemistry, and that could be kind of a sleepy upcoming player who, again, is a developmental guy. I think he's second or third year. So these young guys who kind of been on the practice squad developing are kind of starting to show out, which has kind of been the formula for the John Lynch Shanahan era. Grab guys that you can develop over 2-3 years. When those guys that we talk about, like a Deommodore Lenoir or a Kendrick Bourne, have to go on, you have replacements for that. So it's good to see these young linemen developing. Even the kid from Kingston, from USC, they drafted in the 6th round, with Trent Williams being out, he's been playing right tackle, I heard. And he's been looking really good. So, again, another young potential lineman. So the line all of a sudden has a little more depth than we thought, much like the secondary.
Really quick on offense before we bounce to our next topic is the receiver room. The last one or two spots is going to be up in the air, right between Ronnie Bell and a few others. And apparently Ronnie Bell has been shown out at practice. I think today they said he had like 3 or 4 big catches. And so that's stuff you like to see. I think Owens' kid had a drop, didn't get another look, but prior to that, he was getting a lot of traction as well. I hope that we can retain him.
Today he caught a deep ball, I heard, and the crowd kind of went wild. So
I think we can retain him on the practice squad, but because of his last name and who he is, he might get picked up somewhere. Like especially like a receiver needy team. I mean, the Chargers already drafted Brendan Rice. I could see them making a move for Owens' kid as well, because they don't have a lot of depth in the receiver room. That's just the first team that comes to mind, but there's 31 other teams in the NFL. And not everyone has the same battles. And so when training camp gets sorted out and roster cuts start happening, I hope those guys make it pretty deep into the preseason, but I don't know if they'll actually make it back to us. We'll find out if they clear waivers and whatnot, but that's another kind of group that's interesting to look at because of the battles that are happening. It's not as straightforward as like we pretty much can guarantee who the D line is going to be, who the linebackers are going to be. We don't know who's going to be starting necessarily for the linebackers. We know who's going to make it for the O-line for the most part. Zakel's on that bubble. The DB room is set. I mean, a lot of Darrell Luter Jr. is going to have trouble making the team this year. He's going to have to beat out Ambry Thomas.
I think he'll be a practice squad guy.
He's been pretty good. He was out all last year with injuries. I think he played a little bit at the end of the season, if I remember correctly, but that's where those bubbles are going to be, right? I mean, it's going to be that last lineman. You know, people that can play center and guard might make it over someone that can only play guard or tackle.
I mean, people have 2 receivers. 2 receivers are going to have to be cut, right? Because there's so many of them. So
yeah, Danny Gray. That's another person
I think he's gone.
He's on his last leg. I personally wouldn't be mad if we lost him. I'd rather have Ronnie Bell. I think Ronnie Bell's more of a player because he blocks, and Danny Gray doesn't really block. And in the Shanahan offense, you have to block. And if for whatever reason Ayuk's not on the team, we're not going to get into the Ayuk contract situation, but
let's just say he's on the team. So you got Ayuk, Debo, Pearsall, Jennings. That's 4.
Pearsall also has been playing.
That's one thing. So that's 4 receivers. So you're only going to keep 5, right? Maybe 6. So you have Cowing. We haven't seen Cowing, but you would you have Cowing, Ronnie Bell,
Danny Gray.
That would be 6. I would rather have Cowing over Danny Gray. Trent Williams. I'd rather have Cowing and Ronnie Bell over. Trent Taylor.
Chris Conley might not make the team.
Yeah, practice squad maybe. So like, there's going to be there's going to be 4 receivers that get cut, and maybe only 2 of them are going to make the practice squad. So there's going to be some names that, like Danny Gray, some guys that have been on the team. Like Ronnie Bell, if he doesn't make the roster, he's going to get picked up.
Do you think we could trade any of them?
The only one would be Brandon Ayuk.
You don't think we could get like a seventh round pick for?
No, he's
Yeah,
shown absolutely nothing.
I don't know. I don't think
Yeah.
so either. So I think unfortunately we're not going to be able to recoup anything there. The room that I do think we could do something with is the running back room.
Yeah, that's the one I wanted to talk about today. Early on, I think in our first podcast back, I think my hot take of the year was Cody Schrader going to be RB2 um, going into week 1 of the football season. I've heard good things about him. I've heard good things coming out of camp about Mason and Elijah Mitchell. They all look good. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey looks like Christian McCaffrey. Garindo, he pulled a hammy. It's pretty severe. He won't be able to get back before the end of training camp. So they said they're pretty much going to redshirt him because he's not going to make the roster without a training camp as a rookie. So then you get down to 4 running backs: McCaffrey, Locke, and then you have Mason, Mitchell, and Schrader. One has to be the odd man out. I think Schrader can have a big preseason, which means he would get snagged if he got cut probably by like a Cowboys that need a running back, right? And so if I'm the Niners and there's even anything close to Schrader being good enough to be right there with Mason or Mitchell, you have to trade Mitchell or Mason, get some value back, which you can, and ride with the young guy that's less money because Mitchell's going to be gone, I think, after this year, anyways. So get his 5th-round pick, send him to whoever, and he hasn't been healthy. Now you got Mason and Schrader, and I think Schrader can outduel Mason. I think, but I think that's going to how the outcome's going to be. Mitchell gets traded. You have Mason and Schrader with McCaffrey.
I think Mitchell could go somewhere like, well, if any running back goes down and a team is desperate, yeah, fifth or sixth round pick, maybe a comp pick the
I mean, you
next
don't want
year.
to send him to the Cowboys, but they need a running back. They would
They
give
need
you a
a
fifth
running
round
back.
pick
I'm
for
thinking of the
Mitchell.
Cowboys. I'm thinking of the New York Giants. I've been watching their Hard Knocks preseason, and
Yep.
they're hyped up about Devin Singletary and Tyrone Taylor or something like that. Some fifth or sixth round pick. He's good. He had a couple
Elijah Mitchell would be
stats,
nice.
but Elijah Mitchell's I think is better than both of them.
And we've traded a running back to the Giants before. Remember we did that with I'm brain farting on his name. He 22 for the Niners back in like 19, super quick.
Oh, I'm blanking
Uh,
out too. I'm blanking out. I know you're talking about, but you get what I'm saying. I think,
Breida.
yeah, Matt Breida,
Yep.
most likely trade candidate in the running back room would be Elijah Mitchell. I think the Niners would not part ways with Jordan Mason because he's cheaper and he has more upside, and I think he's better. He's not as injury prone, unfortunately for Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah.
He plays, they say 200, but I think that's like a bulk weight for him. He's probably more like 190, and he plays a
Mitchell is really
physical
good.
style.
He's really
He
good.
plays a
He just
physical
is
style. I just
injury.
think he gets injured every year. I mean, it's like clockwork. He will get injured, so that's why I look at the depth chart. And when you say your prediction about Cody Schrader, I look at it like there is a possibility there. Like I think we talked about it a little bit before, but what if Jordan Mason has an oopsie fumble again? Shanahan pulls him out of the game, puts CMC back in for. He's already got 30 touches, and we put CMC back in with a 30-point lead. It's pointless. Just because Shanahan's worried that Jordan Mason's going to fumble the ball and not be able to run out the clock. He doesn't have the trust of Shanahan because of that situation. I mean, if he didn't fumble, Jordan Mason would have gotten the ball a lot more last year, but we can all pretty much guarantee and chalk it up to the fact that he lost Shanahan's trust. Then when you look at a guy like Cody Schrader, I think he went to what, Mizzo? Or where'd he go? Mississippi?
Yep, Missouri. And I don't think he had a
Missouri.
fumble last year. I'll look it up.
And he led the SEC in rushing yards with something crazy. 15, 16, 1,700 yards. I mean, it was a really high number. I think he averaged, 5 or 6 yards a carry, which for someone with his to go undrafted kind of blows my mind. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's probably because he's a white running back, and there hasn't been too many of them in the NFL that are good, right? You can kind of count them off on your hands: Toby Gerhart, Danny Woodhead, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the list isn't very long there, and so Cody Schrader probably didn't get the same attention as other running backs might, and he did lead the SEC in rushing yards. He has been said in training camp to have made a huge play every day. Not just a couple good plays, but a big game-breaking play every single day. And that didn't stop when they put the pads on, so you know it's serious. So I do think, and I would feel more confident in having a running back room that was CMC, Jordan Mason, Cody Schrader, whoever's second or third. Maybe that's both of them. Because if CMC, knock on wood, does go, I think the offense doesn't skip too much of a beat with guys like Jordan Mason and Cody Schrader.
Yeah, I mean, I think Schrader has all the tools needed to be successful. He's just one of those guys that was a veteran. Again, kind of like Pooney, went to a small school, bet on himself, transferred to Missouri, dominated when he got there. So the change in athleticism didn't affect him much, jumping from the small school to that school. And then I think the same thing's going to happen in the NFL. He's just a guy. There's certain running backs, and when you see it, like the vision that they have, right? Like this, there's this kid I'm coaching in his Pee Wee football, and he's 11. I think he's 10 or 11. He has to be 10 or 11. He just has that vision, right? Like we're installing the counter play, and I slow it down and I say, watch your guard pull, right? Watch him kick that guy out, and that's your cutback lane. And he saw it one time, and then every time we run it now, he's cutting right off that lane. Just guys have vision; they know how to hit the hole right. Some guys are super athletic and can't do that, and it's kind of like a gift. And things are just slower for some guys, and he's got that gift. McCaffrey's just one of those freaks that has the athleticism and that rare vision where he can make big plays. And that's where the NFL running backs make their mark, is when you have the athleticism with that vision. So I think Cody Schrader has it. I think he has the grit to do it. So he's going to be fun to watch.
And then, unfortunately, I do want to make one comment. Isaac Guerendo is already seeming like a classic second, third, fourth round running back Shanahan pick that is just a complete fumble. We've done it once a year, every year. We know that we're in the second, third, fourth round. I get nervous. I'm like, what random running back are we going to draft this year? Right? Yep. Trey Sermon was a complete bust. Isaac Guerendo is a bust.
The kid from Utah, I think the first was a kid.
That's what I was going to say. Going back to Joe Williams, he didn't even play a single NFL down. He just decided that, you know what, I don't want to play, which makes me think, did they even interview this guy? Like, how did you interview this guy and go, he's committed to playing, and then he doesn't even practice? I don't even think he practiced. I mean, and that was a fourth round pick. We have wasted a second, third, or fourth round pick on a running back once a year. And every year that happens, the undrafted player or the late round pick, Jordan Mason was what, 5th, 6th round, 7th round pick?
I think he might have been undrafted, honestly.
I mean, we're looking at guys every year that Elijah Mitchell was a late round pick and or undrafted. Matt Braid, a late round pick and or undrafted. We're looking at all these guys that are consistently better. It's a pattern every year. And you know what? If you look at it in the grand scheme of things, we're getting a running back each year. That's awesome. But can't we use this draft pick for something else?
Jordan Mason was undrafted. So we're very likely to have, in my opinion, Christian McCaffrey, who was, I think, a top 5 pick, and then 2 undrafted running backs. That's going to be our depth chart. Top 5 pick, Christian McCaffrey, possible Hall of Famer, and then 2 undrafted guys, who I think are really good, but none of the guys we've drafted in the last 5 years are going to be on the roster anymore.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Will Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch break this pattern next year? Find out.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I'm gonna put hard money on the no.
If I'm a betting man, which I am, I'm putting $100 on the fact that they draft. If you could do a Vegas
third,
pick
fourth,
somewhere,
third, fourth, and fifth. Yep. I think the odds would be like plus 500. Like you're gonna have to bet 500 to win 100.
Yeah, they would be so in the Vegas's favor. But no, I mean, training camp with pads, things are happening, and knock on wood, there will be injuries. But I think that we are making our best effort to avoid that. And as long as we can come out with the depth we have in a couple weeks and retain most of these players and hopefully make the right roster decisions for a few of these bubble guys, the depth is something that we haven't had. And it's because of the Niners have been drafting like a year ahead every year, right? Every year, people don't realize this, but they're really planning to not play most of the people they draft. Maybe the first rounder plays, maybe the second rounder plays, but historically they haven't, right? Unless you're Nick Bosa. Pearsall is the first round pick. He's not going to play. He's not going to play a lot. I mean, Drake Jackson's second round pick. He hasn't played at all.
He's another guy that is out and hurt again. So
surprise. But I do think that, with the last 2 years of drafting for the next year and then the rookies this year showing up, we have more depth than we usually do. And that's just a general opinion. I'm not at training camp. We haven't had a preseason game yet, but it sounds to me that there's more talent on this roster than last year's roster. Bold statement, maybe, but it's early in training camp. We're here to just report off what we see. Mark and I don't go to the practices. We don't have media passes yet. So we're kind of just going off of what we hear. So we're taking everything with a grain of salt. Mark, I don't know. We should probably wrap it up pretty soon. Anything else you want to go over? I think that was
all the topics I had. Yeah, I mean, there was the conspiracy on how Ayuk shook John Lynch's hand compared to Shanahan's. It was like a goodbye, but we're going to be hearing all about that for the next 4 weeks, so there's no reason for us to touch on that. You can get all that information from your insiders that were there.
You get that from ESPN.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not gonna. You don't need to get that from us. That's not something that's like front page news for whatever reason. Thank you everyone that's made it this far and listening. Once again, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. And Mark, we're just gonna have to close it out. Me and you, bang bang.
Niner gang, get better, Ryan.